United Nations, April 14. TASS. Russia has submitted a draft resolution to the UN Security Council denouncing a missile strike by the United States and its allies against Syria and demanding that they immediately stop their aggression against that country. Russia's permanent envoy at the UN Vasily Nevenzya said the document is on the table and ready for voting. The missile strikes are aggravating the humanitarian situation and provoking a new wave of refugees, he said. The diplomat made this statement at an emergency session of the UN Security Council convened on Russia's demand to discuss the missile strikes delivered by the United States, Great Britain and France against Syria. By its actions, the U.S. is increasingly aggravating the humanitarian catastrophe in Syria, bringing sufferings to civilians and actually conniving at terrorists who have been tormenting the Syrian people for 7 years and provoking a new wave of refugees from that country and the region as a whole, Nevenzya stressed. The one-page document, a copy of which has been obtained by TASS, expresses indignation over the aggression against the Syrian Arab Republic by the United States and its allies, which violates international law and the UN Charter. The document condemns the Western countries' actions and demands that they halt the aggression against the Syrian Arab Republic immediately and without any delay, and refrain from further use of force actions in violation of the UN Charter. The draft resolution prepared by Russia expresses concern that the strikes against Syria were delivered at a time when experts of the Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons started their work for gathering evidence of the alleged chemical attack in the town of Douma. The current escalation of the situation around Syria is exerting a destructive influence on the entire system of international relations. History will put everything in its proper place, and it has already placed upon Washington grave responsibility for the bloody crackdown on Yugoslavia, Iraq and Libya, the diplomat said. According to the envoy, Russia has made everything possible to convince the United States and its allies to give up militaristic plans fraught with a new wave of violence in Syria and destabilization in the Middle East. The countries that are justifying military actions in Syria by the struggle against terrorists are actually seeking to dismember that country, he added. It seems that it has finally become clear that those in the West who are exploiting humanitarian rhetoric and trying to justify their military presence in Syria by the needs to crush jihadists are actually aligning themselves with them and seeking to dismember the country, the envoy stressed. Moscow has big doubts that the fight against terrorism is Washington's sole goal in Syria, he said. The strikes were delivered against Syrian military aerodromes, which are used in operations against terrorist organizations, the envoy said. This is quite a peculiar contribution to the fight against international terrorism, which, as Washington tirelessly repeats, is the sole aim of its military presence in Syria. We have big doubts about that, the Russian diplomat said. As the envoy said, those in the West who are exploiting humanitarian rhetoric and trying to justify their military presence in Syria by the needs to crush jihadists are actually aligning themselves with them and seeking to dismember the country. The missile strike against Syria's military and civilian infrastructures was carried out by U.S. warplanes and naval ships in cooperation with the British and French air forces on April 14.